A very good evening to respected teachers, and without much delay, I will directly begin with my case. I am Dr. Manali Chandra, second year postgraduate trainee from Medical College, Kolkata. My case is of a 45-year-old male patient, a Hindu farmer from Howrah, West Bengal, who got admitted in our hospital on the 9th of July, 2019, and was examined by me 4 days later. He came with the chief complaints of diminished sensation in the trunk and bilateral lower limbs for the last 1.5 months, with inability to walk for the same duration. Also, he had increased urinary frequency for the last 3 weeks. Now, coming to the history of present illness, this patient was apparently well 45 days back when he suddenly experienced an acute onset abnormal band-like sensation all around his trunk at the nipple level. This was immediately followed by abnormal burning sensation along with tingling and numbness in his left lower limb, with involvement of the opposite right lower limb within the next 24 hours itself. He did not complain of any electric shock-like sensation radiating down either of his legs or any such sensation going down the spine on bending his neck. On asking the patient, he did not complain of any pain over his vertebra, and also no complaints were there for his upper limb. The very next day, when he developed these sensory symptoms, he noticed that his left lower limb was getting weak. Both his proximal and distal muscles were weak, and in the next 24 hours, his right lower limb also became weak. At the time of presentation, he complained of stiffness in his legs, and he said that he had noticed flexor spasm in his lower limbs. There were no abnormal thinning or fasciculation in his lower limb muscles, no weakness of his upper limb, neck muscles. He did not have any respiratory distress. His weakness did not show any diurnal variation, and no such prior history of weakness was there. The weakness reached its maximum peak within 72 hours, and thereafter it plateaued. That is, it became static. Now, as I said in the chief complaint, he had also a problem of urgency, frequency, and difficulty in initiating his micturition for the last 3 weeks, as he told at the time of admission. He also said that initially he had one episode of painless retention of urine 1 month back, and it was relieved only after catheterization. It was not associated with any burning during micturition. He did not have any past similar problem. The bladder symptoms were associated with constipation developing almost simultaneously, but they were relieved after taking some laxatives. Now, coming to important negative histories, he did not have any history suggestive of any cortical involvement, as headache, vomiting, seizure, speech abnormality, or alteration in behavior. Among his cranial nerves, he had normal findings with respect to all his cranial nerves, including normal visual acuity and color vision, and there were no painful eye movements or diplopia. His bulbar muscles were also normal. He did not complain of any other autonomic symptoms like postural dizziness, palpitation, or loss of sweating. On provoking, he did not recall any episode of fever, diarrhea, or sore throat anytime before the onset of his symptoms. Also, he did not have symptoms suggestive of any connective tissue disease in the past. Now, the other important negative history in this case are that he was not having any weight loss or decrease in appetite. There were no swelling anywhere in the body, no past history of his own self or contact history with tuberculosis, no history of trauma, radiation, or recent vaccination. promiscuous sexual activity, or bleeding diathesis was unknown in this patient. At the time of presentation, he was having difficulty in walking on his own and he required help from his family members. There were no significant past history of any similar episode in the past, and no similar illness in his close or distant relatives as well. This person was educated till class 10, was married, belonged from a low socioeconomic status, took vegetarian as well as non-vegetarian diet, and had no addiction or high-risk behavior. He was non-diabetic, non-hypertensive, and had no history of any other atherosclerotic complications. Now, after admission, this patient was given injectable medication, which was continued for 3 days, and he was also demonstrated some physiotherapy. So this completes my history. This is a brief temporal progression of how the disease went by. Initially, a sensory loss of 1.5 months back on day 1, followed by motor weakness on day 2, which progressed for 3 days and thereafter became static. 3 weeks back, he also developed a Yeoman type of bladder. One history of retention in the beginning of symptoms. So to summarize my case, this is a case of a 45-year-old male patient without any pre-existing comorbidities, developing acute onset, bilaterally symmetric spastic paraparesis and truncal weakness with maximum involvement within 72 hours and remaining static thereafter, with all modality sensory involvement of both the legs and the trunk up to the nipple level and band-like sensation at the same level, with Yeoman type of bladder. He had no cranial nerve involvement or any respiratory involvement, no radicular pain or back pain, and no history of trauma or TB.
Okay, Manali, you stop here.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So, Dr. Chakraborty, Orko Prabhu Chakraborty.
Yes, sir.
So, can you find any lacunae in this history, or everything is okay up to MD level?
Sir, this is a very well presented history, I must say. I would like to point out some points from the history.
Okay.
Can you open your video?
Yes, sir, surely.
That is more lively. Manali, try to open up your video so that it becomes more lively.
Okay,
Sir, am I visible?
Yeah, you are visible.
Yes, sir. So I would like to point out some points from the history. From the history itself, we can find out many points. She has told that there was pain in this patient. So
yes,
there can be 3 to 4 types of pain while assessing a case of paraparesis. The pain she has described is one type of a funicular type of pain, which is burning type of a pain. And this is usually...
One minute, please. Sir.
Yes, sir.
I think let us discuss what is the lacunae, and she should explain what is the cause of pain. Let us, and then you will explain what she has left. Sir just regarding the lacunae, let her tell the lacunae. If you will explain all the possibilities, then she cannot exercise her brain. Let us ask her what are the possibilities of
Yes,
that
sir.
pain. Yes, that is my view. You are an expert, so
Okay.
if she leaves anything left, then you have to add that. Let us ask what is the lacunae in the history. Sir has asked regarding the lacunae in the history. Can you point out any?
At this point, I would like to point out, while considering a case of paraparesis, which is non-compressive, and about 3 days, the maximal onset has taken about 72 hours to develop. In this case, while developing an NMO-SD spectrum of disease, we should also inquire about some specific things which occur during the NMO-SD. She has well mentioned it. We have to, another history we have to take, that was there any history of any acute confusional state in this patient previously? Was there any history of recurrent vomiting associated with hiccups in this patient? These are indicators of a previously occurring area postrema syndrome, or
Yes.
acute cortical syndrome, or acute diencephalic syndrome, which may have been predictors, but the patient party and the patient does not give too much recognition to these symptoms. So they may be missed. And from history, we can find out that these are important indicators of pointing this case as a case of NMOSD.
Regarding whether she has told any loss of vision, there is no.
Yeah, she has mentioned about the loss of vision.
Diplopia.
Manali,
Yes, sir.
Manali, from the history, what is your impression? What are the anatomical structure is involved, and why you are saying that that particular anatomical structure is involved of neurological system? What are the anatomical structures involved that you can guess from your history?
Okay, sir. Sir,
Just 1
usually
minute, just 1 minute, Manali, with permission from Dr. Jaypal. I am
Yes.
just try to highlight one important point. Manali,
Yes,
you have
yes,
just read your slide. You have mentioned about bilateral symmetric spastic paraparesis.
yes, sir.
You have used the word spastic. Okay.
Yes, sir.
What history?
Yes, sir.
What history you have got that is a spastic paraparesis? Or regarding
Yes, sir.
spasticity, what we ask in the history? What history will tell you that the patient has got spastic paraparesis? Have you mentioned in your history anything?
Yes, sir. Sir, if I go back to the slide where I explained the motor symptoms, this patient did complain of stiffness in his leg at the time of admission, and along with that, he also had noticed flexor
Very
spasms.
good,
And this
very
is,
good.
I think, a very hard point.
So this
which
is
goes
the
into
thing the postgraduate should notice, that if you got a stiffness in the leg or the history sudden spasm of the flexor, here she has mentioned specifically flexor group of muscle. So if you have these types of problems, so we can call it as a, because these slides, they cannot correlate with this slide. That's why I mentioned. Now you go to what Dr. Pal has asked, the anatomical structures. Now go to the last slide.
Yes.
Last one. Yes. Now,
Sir, as we can see here, there are some very important points which point to the substrate involved. We can see that the patient has motor symptoms, he has sensory symptoms, and he has bladder, like autonomic symptoms. If a patient is having all three symptoms together, it is suggestive of involvement of the spinal cord. This is number 1 point. And the second and a hard point which goes in favor of myelopathy is that this band-like sensation that this patient had complained, and this sensation is not possible in any other substrate, neurological substrate involvement.
So
These are the
band-like
2 points.
sensation is basically related to what? Which structure is which causes the band-like sensation?
Yes, sir. Actually, sir, band-like sensation is present when dorsal.
Very good. So dorsal column involvement, posterior column or bilateral sensory root in the same segmental level if it is involved.
Yes,
So
sir.
bilateral sensory root in the same level or the dorsal column involvement can give rise to your band-like sensation. Again, you have mentioned another important thing, that on bending the neck, the patient does not have any electric sensation going down the spine. You have mentioned it.
Yes, sir.
You have mentioned
Yes,
already. What do you want to
Yes.
mean by that?
Sir, this actually is suggestive of a Lermite sign. Usually, initially, we used to know that it is found in multiple sclerosis only with cervical cord dorsal column involvement. But nowadays, it has been found in other etiologies as well, like in cervical spondylosis and other etiologies, and SSED as well.
Yes, very good. SSCP noise, you get it in the subacute combined degeneration.
Yes, sir. SSED.
Yes, sir. You have mentioned no radicular pain. Okay.
No radicular
Yes,
pain.
sir.
What is the important? Which structure is not involved? No radicular pain.
So, as the name suggests, a radicular pain means that the root is involved. So, in this patient, absence of radicular pain suggests that no root involvement is there. Usually, root involvement suggests compressive kind of myelopathy.
The second
How
question.
root involved? How root involvement you can express? What is a radicular pain?
What
How
is radicular?
we can differentiate from a funicular pain?
Yes, sir. So radicular pain has got a very typical history where we find that the electric shock-like sensation goes down the dermatome of that particular root, and the pain increases when there is increased strain on the nerve, that is on coughing, sneezing, lifting heavy weight, like this. And this is a radicular pain. And sir, funicular pain is something very is felt on the it's felt on the in the midline in the back. It is a very ill localized pain. It happens because of intramedullary lesions usually.
No. You have to tell a band-like sensation. We are asking about the band-like sensation. That band-like sensation is due to posterior column involvement. It usually occurs in the circle.
Yes,
but radicular pain is asymmetrical. Usually, most of the time asymmetrically. But if the disease extends, then becomes symmetrical, and that increases with coughing, sneezing, change of posture, and there will be sensors in that dermatome. That is the difference. And you have in your description, you are told that there is truncal weakness. How could you make that truncal weakness? And without examining, you have to written that there is loss of all modalities of sensation.
Yes, sir. Sir, truncal weakness, actually, while taking history, the patient said that he was having difficulty in getting up from the bed as well as on turning from side to side. These two symptoms are suggestive of truncal weakness, number one.
Yes.
And sir, what was your second question?
How can you tell that there is loss of all modalities of sensation?
All modalities, yes, sir.
Without
Sir, yes, sir. Without examination.
Yes.
Yes, sir. Sir, actually, the patient gave very characteristic history. He said that he was having burning sensation and tingling numbness. Now, sir, burning sensation is actually suggestive of lateral spinothalamic tract involvement. It's a small fiber involvement sensation is burning sensation. So we can assume that his spinothalamic tract was involved, and the tingling numbness suggests that his dorsal column is involved. So I can derive safely that he was having a problem in both the modalities.
There can, but loss without examining, you cannot tell that it's complete loss. One thing, and can there be both? What is a positive symptom here? What is a negative symptom here?
Sir, basically,
can both coexist, tingling and numbness.
Which is positive, which is negative? Tingling
yes.
and numbness.
Sir, out of these three sensations, burning and tingling are positive, numbness is negative, and burning and sensation are positive. Burning sensation is positive symptom for small fiber, and tingling is positive symptom for like large fiber, and numbness is a negative finding for large fiber.
Now, can burning and numbness or tingling can coexist?
Yes, sir. If the two tracks are involved together, then there might be such problem.
Where will get a tingling, where you get a numbness or burning, or there on the same line we'll get all the three. One positive and one negative. Can you get on the same line? That I'm asking.
Sir, these questions are basically as patients we see in the outdoors, sir, they complain of both tingling and numbness in both lower limbs. Like frequently we experience diabetes patients, they complain of both tingling and numbness in the like simultaneously in both their lower limbs.
Yes,
so
diabetes with a peripheral neuropathy, and there is a segment, there is peripheral nerve and globs and stocking duration, and some part will have a positive symptom, some part will have a negative symptom. But you are having a compressive, for example, either a compressive or non-compressive spinal cord lesion. Can you have a both positive and negative at the same lesion? That I'm asking. Leave it. That will be explained by our neurologist. Third thing, what is the function of a bladder? Whether it is upper motor neuron bladder or lower motor neuron bladder.
She has mentioned it is upper neuron bladder.
Manali, your impression is a cord lesion. So from history, whether it is a compressive lesion or non-compressive lesion.
Okay, sir. Sir, actually, in my opinion, it is a non-compressive lesion. Why? So, because, sir, some very hard points in favor of compressive lesion is that the patient has extremely symmetrical involvement simultaneously involving all the three modalities, and the patient has early bladder involvement, and at the same time patient does not have any signs of compressive lesion like vertebral pain or root pain.
Okay.
So from these findings, I can derive that most likely it is a non-compressive lesion, and the acute onset also is partly going in favor of non-compressive lesion.
So if it is a compressive lesion, gradually tract one by one will go. If it is a
Yes, sir. Sequential involvement.
So sequential involvement of the tract is suggestive of your compressive lesion. If it is from the extramedullary side, you will get the radicular pain in the very beginning, asymmetric onset, and gradually one after another will take place. And later on the bladder will be involved. If it is an intramedullary, the bladder fiber is inside. So the first thing will happen with this particular problem, maybe a dissociated sensory loss, or it can have your bladder problem to start with, and gradually it can involve the other tracts. So the Manali is very much right in the sense, for the postgraduate I am telling, that you see the tracts are classically involved. So if you get the motor symptom, if you get the sensory symptom, if you get the autonomic symptom, all these things point toward a particular anatomical site where Professor Paul was asking that all these three cannot be explained with any other anatomical substrate other than the spinal cord. So she is telling that it is a spinal cord, basically a spinal cord lesion. Why it is a non-compressive and compressive, she has already explained. So this is the basic message from her history. Now about the funicular pain and other thing, a question arises. But mind you, the funicular pain can be a throbbing type of pain also. Funicular pain can be related to your spinothalamic tract involvement. It can be due to even posterior colon involvement. You can get the funicular pain, but it is usually a vague in character. So you can get these types of funicular pain, not a very classical dermatomal fashion, but rather in an ill-localized fashion. So you can have a funicular pain. And bilaterally roots or posterior column involvement will give rise to your girdle-like sensation. Dr. Arkoprabha Chakraborty, do you like to add anything?
No, sir, exactly. This one thing in pain I should add over here is that the presentation in the background of paraparesis, if along with the paraparesis, it's a hyperacute one, the progression, and along with it, there is a diffuse back pain. In this case, it is due to, we should keep in mind about a vascular etiology of a paraparesis, where there is maybe a spinal SH or a anterior spinal artery thrombosis, where we can get diffuse and hyperacute pain all over the back, distributed all over the back. This should be kept in mind also while taking the history.
Now, Manali, now you tell us what I have asked you previously also. Now you tell us about when there are 4 or 5 important conditions of dissociated sensory loss.
Yes, 4 or 5 situations of dissociative sensory loss.
Sir, actually, what does the term dissociated sensory loss mean? It means that one of the, there are 2 modalities basically, dorsal column or large fiber and small fiber or spinothalamic. Like if one is affected and the other is spared, then
you tell me the causes. We know the mechanism. You tell the causes.
Yes,
simple.
Yes,
Situation.
Where you get it? Where you get it?
Yes, sir. The situation where we get it, one classical thing is central cord syndrome, like syringomyelia, where the spinothalamic will be lost, but the posterior column will be.
One is syringomyelia. Next.
One syringomyelia. Next.
Then, sir, in lateral medullary syndrome.
Very good. Very good.
Number 3. Number
3, sir, SACD or subacute combined degeneration. The posterior cord will be involved and the spinothalamic will be spared.
Number 4, I told you.
Yes, sir. In sir, in some cases like diabetes, where vibration sense only will be lost, but the other modalities will be spared.
So
another.
Okay.
Another is there. Very important.
In Brown-Sequard syndrome.
Good. Very good.
Another in a high cord lesion. What I told.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
tell me in high cord lesion what happened to the fifth?
Yes, sir. And the last one, sir, in high cord lesion, there will be the pain and temperature or sensation of the face may be lost while sparing the touch sensation.
Why?
It
Why?
is because-
Why?
It is
You explain
because, sir,
another-
Yes, sir. It is because the spinal nucleus, which carries the touch sensation of the face, comes down from the brainstem to the upper part of the cervical cord. So, if up to C4 level.
pain and temperature from the fifth descent up to the C4 level, then crosses the
Yes, sir.
midline, they now ascend
sir.
and touch directly in the middle across the midline.
And
So in a
Yes,
high
sir.
cord lesion, there will be dissociation between regarding the facial nerve touch versus pain and temperature.
Very good.
Yes.
This is the up to this much MD is very good. Now, what I was telling it, I try to impress upon you is that when there is a disproportion can take place in the spinal cord, in the peripheral system, or in the it may be in the central. So if you get the change in the peripheral nerves, like your light fiber, small fiber and large fiber, then and then only you can get the dissociation, like your diabetes, like your amyloidosis. You can get like your Tanger's disease. You can get the dissociated sensory loss in those situations. So that is the very important differentiation between the pain fiber and large fiber. So large fiber basically, can you tell me what are the basic concept of the large fiber? Large fiber actually is basically due to proprioception. Okay. And small fiber basically is due to your spinothalamic trap, that is your light touch, temperature, pinprick, and sometimes small fiber also help you in the 2-point discrimination. This is very, very important to remember. You never test a cortical sensory loss sensation when there is a peripheral nerve involvement. This is a dictum. If you get a peripheral nerve involvement, peripheral neuropathy or something like that, in that situation, the cortical sensory loss should not be tested.
Primary
So-
modality. Yes.
And last question to Manali, what I actually asked you other day, that can you tell us some of the important body landmarks of the sensory dermatome, which are very important in relation to the root?
yes, sir.
Tell,
So if I
just-
be yes, sir. So if I begin from above, from the top, the back of the head or occiput is C2, then the shoulder is C4, then the deltoid, this is C5,
C5.
then the index finger C6, tip of the middle finger C7, and the tip of little
C6 you
finger
better
C8.
tell, C6 you better tell the thumb.
Okay, sir.
Thumb,
Thumb,
tip of the
okay.
thumb. Yes, thumb. Then
Yes, sir. This, sir,
C7 is the middle finger.
C7, middle finger, and little finger C8.
Yes.
C8.
And in
Manali-
your case, it was T4,
Yes, sir.
nipple level. Go to that one.
So nipple level means T4. Umbilicus is T10.
Very good.
Very good.
So
L4, L5,
inguinal,
L4, L5,
sir,
big toe,
sir,
big toe.
big toe, yes, sir. L4, L5, big toe, and little toe is S1.
Good.
And back of the leg is the S2.
S4, S5 is
Back of
genital
leg
area.
is S2, and
S2.
perianal or genital areas S4,
S3,
S5.
S4, S5.
Yes, sir.
Achha, Manali, my question is from the course of the disease, how from the course of the disease you can
Yes,
have
sir.
some idea regarding etiology of the pathology, etiology of the disease.
Yes, sir.
From
Yes,
the
sir.
course of the how you can guess.
Sir, from the course, sir, I will say in particular respect to this patient.
No, not this patient. Overall, from the course of
Okay.
the disease or tempo of the disease, how can you determine the etiology of the patient of the
From
disease?
Sir,
temporal
if we okay, sir. Sir, if we classify on the basis of onset, like acute, subacute, and chronic, in acute onset, which means that the onset will be in minutes to hours up till 7 days, the etiology can be trauma, hemorrhage like epidural hemorrhage or intramedullary hematomylia. It can be typical acute transverse myelitis, and it can be a demyelinating disease, as I told, and yes, and vascular etiologies like infarction.
Yes.
And,
Manali, I am modifying to some extent. If the neurological onset is very nicely written in Hutchinson's clinical method, if at the
Yes, sir.
onset neurodeficit is maximum, etiology
Yes,
must
sir.
possibly trauma or vascular.
Vascular.
Trauma or vascular? Yes,
If,
sir.
if it progressed to some extent for few days or up to weeks, then go in a static phase, then either patient die or improve, possibly it is an infective etiology. If it progressed subacutely over weeks, then possibly etiology is malignancy. If it progressed over months, over years, then etiology possibly degenerative. If there is waxing and waning character, possibly it is the
Multiple
immunological or
sclerosis.
multiple demyelination is the
Demyelination.
very
What
nicely
is
written
the-
in the Hutchinson.
What is the most common cause, Manali, you see in the world as a paraparesis? In last
Sir,
2 years,
most
you have seen.
commonly, sir, most commonly that I have encountered in my experience is, sir, hypokalemic
Very good.
paralysis.
So hypokalemic period you never forget. As the MD examiner, they will ask you which is the thing you have encountered in emergency. Hypokalemic periodic paralysis. Next one,
Next one is, sir, Guillain-Barré syndrome, GBS.
very good.
Acute.
Both of which you have not mentioned in acute onset. So Guillain-Barré
Yes.
and then your hypokalemic periodic
Hypokalemic,
paralysis.
yes.
These are very important.
Among these two, which is a neurological disorder, whether hypokalemic periodic paralysis is a neurological disorder? What type of disorder is hypokalemic periodic palsy?
He's asking, Professor Bera is asking that whether hypokalemic paralysis is a neurological disorder or not.
Sir, basically it leads to, sir, it is a neurological disorder in the sense it affects the muscles. So it is a myopathy basically, like myopathy
it is a
because of
channelopathy.
vitamin.
You tell it is a channelopathy,
Channelopathy, yes.
Channelopathy,
but
yes.
its manifestation may be in the neurological form, in the form of muscle involvement, weakness. Okay.
Practically, we tell is a muscular disease. Another thing in the history you have mentioned regarding oral ulcer, hair loss, and dryness of mouth. What do you want to to tell us regarding the negative
Okay, sir.
history? Yes.
Sir, basically, like
Yes.
as I was,
Alopecia, yes.
so these basically, sir, so these are features of connective tissue disorders. Some connective tissue diseases like SLE, Sjogren, like MCTT, these are frequently associated with paraparesis because of either vascular involvement, vasculitis, or demyelination. As a result, to rule out any of these, I have taken this history.
Very good. So can you tell us one thing in relation to Sjogren syndrome,
Yes.
what
Yes,
type
sir.
of involvement you classically come across in Sjogren?
So ganglionopathy.
Very good. And
Yes.
what is its manifestation?
So most
How
commonly,
the ganglionopathy manifests in the clinical setup?
most commonly, sir, sensory ataxia.
Very
Yes.
good. So
And
very good.
Loss of all the sensation of posterior
Yeah,
column.
that is
below
there,
the-
but this very classical she has told that is your sensory ataxia. So ganglionopathy. Fine. So go to the last slide and then you tell your differential diagnosis. What diagnosis you have come? Now you have mentioned that there is no ocular symptoms. There is no eye problem. In these types of disease, always you have to look for dimness of vision, pain in the eye. You have mentioned already. You have mentioned why you have given so much importance to this eye movement, eye pain, and dimness of vision, color vision. Why it is
Sir,
so
actually,
important?
to go directly to the answer, I was suspecting optic neuritis.
Very good. So you have to surface. So can you tell us a few of the cranial nerves which are associated with the paraplegia?
Sir, number one is like I had mentioned.
Patient has got paraplegia, and which are
Yes.
the cranial nerves from starting from 1 to 12? You tell me the conditions.
Sir, two is in optic neuritis and
Start
other.
from the one. Start from one. Olfactory. Where you get the paraparesis? Olfactory. Now we don't see much, but sepileptic taboperiasis. I know you do not.
Sir,
be able-
Cabes dorsalis.
Yeah.
Yes,
Taboperiasis. Taboperisis once upon a time could produce your paraparesis with olfactory involvement. Number two is optic. Optic, you have already mentioned what? Quick.
Sir, neuromyelitis optica, multiple sclerosis like this.
Very good. Retinitis pigmentosa in spinocerebellar degeneration. That is very important. You have to look the fundus. Then you have to look for the subaquate myeloopticoneuropathy, SMON. SMON, have you, do you
Yes,
know the
SMON.
SMON? Yes. And never forget, in Guillain-Barré
And
sometimes,
SSC.
no, in
Guillain-Barré.
Guillain-Barré sometimes you can come across with papilledema. A few patients of Guillain-Barré can give rise to papilledema. I don't go to the mechanism.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
that
Yes,
for
sir.
six.
Atypical
Patient
degeneration.
also can have a lower motor neuron, even 7th nerve, 9th, 10th.
Now you go to the third, fourth, sixth.
So third, fourth, sixth can be involved in multiple sclerosis in
No,
myasthenia.
You say first the Guillain-Barré with Miller-Fisher variant. That is important.
Yes, sir.
Miller-Fisher, third foot.
Okay, external ophthalmoplegia, Miller-Fisher, and sometimes you can get the Arjen-Robertson pupil. Nowadays we don't get it in syphilis. Okay, then you go to the fifth cranial nerve. Fifth cranial nerve, descending tract of the trigeminal nerve can be involved in size cervical cord lesion. Okay, what there it can cause the facial analgesia on one side, sparing of the perioral area. Perioral area sensation will be normal. This part will be, as already you have mentioned.
Why this type of
This is an onion bulb. Balaclava helmet distribution. Because
why this happened? Why this happened? And explain anatomically.
Sir, as you were saying in that dissociated sensory loss explanation, here also, sir, basically the central part, since the spinal nucleus of trigeminal comes down to the high cervical cord region, and basically the face is like demonstrated or like represented in such a way that the periphery of the face is represented more downward, and the central part of the face is represented upside. So if there is high cervical cord lesion, then only the periphery will be affected and sparing the perioral region, as sir was telling.
Yes.
Very good.
Very
so
good.
That can give rise to paraplegia. Then your sixth cranial nerve involvement, isolated sixth cranial nerve you can get in the Fox cerebri tumor. Okay, it's a false localizing sign. Then your seventh cranial nerve involvement, basically bilateral GBS, GB syndrome, lower motor neuron type. Then your eighth cranial nerve, Madras variety of motor neuron disease. Okay. Then your 9th, 10th, and 12th, spinal accessory, glossopharyngeal and vagus nerve. Then motor neuron, pharyngeal palsy. This even MND. Then you can get the Guillain-Barré syndrome, cranial polyneuritis. All these things will come. So just by the by, I have mentioned it. Some examiners are interested. They can ask you this question: cranial nerve with paraplegia. Or anything like to add?
No, sir. That would be all.
Okay, thank you. Then you proceed. Anatomical structure you have mentioned about the myelopathy. Okay, involving same. All this has been discussed. What is your etiology? Non-compressive. Acute. Now you tell Manali.
Manali,
Yes,
proceed.
Proceed.
Sir, I'll go to the next slide.
Yes,
No,
yes.
no, this slide, you read this slide. You have not read this slide.
Sir, as we have already discussed, the differential diagnosis is likely a myelopathy involving the upper dorsal spine, and being a non-compressive myelopathy of acute type, the first differential diagnosis will be an acute transverse myelitis due to either a post-infective immune-mediated disease or a demyelinating disease, which can be primary or secondary to a connective tissue disorder. Taking into account the acute onset, it can be vascular, or it can also be infective or paraneoplastic acute necrotizing myelopathy. A few causes of acute compressive lesions should also be kept in mind, like epidural hemorrhage, hematomylia, disc prolapse, and Carey spine.
Very good.
Yeah, this plus you cannot bring here in the thoracic region.
Yes, sir. It is little uncommon.
Uncommon. It is uncommon. Orko, do you agree with this thing?
Exactly, sir.
Very good.
Yes.
Next slide.
Now proceed. Examination. Very good.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Take some water.
No, sir, it's okay. Coming to the examination, general survey. The patient was conscious, alert, and cooperative at the time of examination. There were no abnormal facies. Horner syndrome was also absent. the build nutrition were average and normal. Decubitus was of choice. However, the attitude of his limbs were like this. They were extended at the hip and the knee, and a plantar flexed at the ankle. There was no pallor, jaundice, cyanosis, clubbing, or edema. Pulse rate was 88, regular. The blood pressure was 120 by 180 and supine, and no significant fall after sitting also. Temperature normal, respiratory rate 18 per minute, and it was abdominothoracic, normal variety. Sweating was normal in both the upper and lower half of the trunk. Neck veins, neck glands were normal, and there were no decubitus ulcer.
From
You have not mentioned about any neurocutaneous markers. Really?
Sir, actually they were absent. I have not mentioned over here.
No,
but they
no,
were
no,
absent.
no, no. You should mention. You
That
should
is
mention
important.
there is no neurocutaneous marker. Dr. Behra is asking you very correct, relevant question. You
Okay,
should
sir.
remember that you can have bilateral neural foramina, I mean neurofibroma, very rarely, but this is not the presentation of neurofibroma. They will have the radicular pain and all these things because these are intradural tumor. There are 3 intradural things we get. You know it very much. One is your neurofibroma. Can you tell these 3?
Intradural tremors.
One is neurofibroma.
Intradural. One is neurofibroma, another is meningioma, and rarely
Very good.
lymphoma.
very good.
Meningioma, neurofibroma, and metastasis.
Manali,
Rarely lymphoma.
Manali, what are the characteristics of the interdural, extramedullary, interdural compressive features of interdural but extramedullary compressive lesions?
Yes, this is asked.
Okay, sir. If I tell it in the form of difference between extramedullary and intramedullary compressive lesion, sir, in terms of
Sure.
sensory, involvement, there will be root pain, typical finding of extradural. Then there will be there will be sacral involvement in extradural and sacral sparing in intradural, because the sacral fibers lie outside. Then bladder involvement will be early in case of sorry sir, I'm
You
basically
confuse.
saying,
See. Manali, compressive
Yes,
lesion
sir.
is divided into 2 parts: intermedullary,
yes,
extramedullary.
yes, sorry.
Extramedullary divided into 2 parts: intradural, extradural.
Extradural.
Say like
Sorry.
this. First,
Yes,
we
sir.
differentiate
Sir.
intermedullary versus extramedullary. Then, in extramedullary, interdural versus extradural. So this
Yes,
is
sir.
that.
First to tell intramedullary so that you can intramedullary and extramedullary. It will be easier for you to explain. First you tell all
Yes,
the
sir.
features of intramedullary.
Yes.
So as I was saying, I was basically differentiate between extramedullary and intramedullary. In intramedullary, there will be no root pain. There will be sacral sparing of sensation. There will be early bladder involvement, and there will be
Sensory loss,
like
what type?
element features will be more prominent, and like fasciculation atrophy, these will be more prominent with less prominent human features, and there will be typically there will be absence of vertebral pain, deformity, or root pain in intramedullary lesions.
I am making it very simple. From inside outside, there is a near to central canal. There is a autonomic fiber, bowel bladder fiber. So intermediary, first bowel bladder, then after bowel autonomic fiber, there is a sensory motor. So first autonomic, then sensory motor. If it is compression come from outside, so first motor sensory, then the autonomic fibers. This is the sequence. And regarding the motor sensory, outside is the sacral and inside is the cervical. The cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and sacral. So if it is intermedullary compression, first the cervical, that means the upper limb will be involved. Then gradually it come to the lower limb. If it is compression from outside, the extramedullary, first the lower limb, sacral fibers, then it will come to the gradually it will come to the upper limb. Regarding the sacral, if it is compression comes from outside, first the sacral area will be involved. So sacral anesthesia will come first, then it will spread outside. It compression from the inside, as the intermediary, sacral fiber will be involved last. That means there will be sacral sparing. This is the basic difference. And regarding the extramedullary, interdural versus extradural, interdural lesions are a chronic, Basically,
Chronic.
this is a chronic. So there will be very long standing history. History may be 1 year, 2 year, or more than 1 year. And there will be more a funicular pain. As there is a more, the cord will be involved. And diffuse pain. If it is a
Diffuse.
extramedullary extradural, onset
Radicular.
3 etiology, 3T, trauma, tumor, tuberculosis.
Trauma, tumor, TB.
So your onset will be acute or subacute. There will be root pain. There will be gibbous. There will be deformity of the spine. And in this way, you will differentiate the compressive lesion. Okay.
One more thing in the
Thank you, sir.
intramedullary, you have to select dissociated sensor loss.
Yes,
There
yes.
will
Yes.
be-
Posterior
yes.
column will be, because there is a
Right.
firm membrane between the anterior 2/3 and posterior 1/3. So posterior column will be involved last in the intramedullary lesion. But from the extramedullary lesion, posterior column will be involved earlier. So this is the differentiating point.
Proceed.
Okay. Jayanto Panda, you might have very good pain. You are not doing any comment. Where is Jayanto?
Manali, proceed.
He is-
Yes, sir. Coming to the neurological examination proper, the patient's higher function was normal. On examination, there were no meningeal signs, no vertebral tenderness or deformity. In motor examination, the attitude of the limbs, as I explained, there was extension at the hip and the knee, and there was plantar flexion at the ankle.
Just a
The
minute.
muscle was,
Just
Yes,
1
sir.
minute. Just 1 minute. You finish that part. The cortical cause of paraplegia. Just to recapitulate, it will be sometimes asked.
okay, sir. The cortical causes of paraplegia can be acute or chronic. Among acute causes, it can be sagittal sinus thrombosis, it can be unpaired ACA thrombosis, and among chronic causes, it can be parasagittal meningioma, it can be hydrocephalus, or it can be cerebral palsy.
Very good. Sometimes multiple sclerosis. Okay. Cortex and
Multiple
spinal cord.
sclerosis.
Yeah. Bilateral leaf involved. That is also written.
Mhm.
Proceed.
Sir, in motor inspection, I explained the attitude. Muscle bulk was preserved and equal on both the lower limbs. Abnormal movements, there was no fasciculation or flexor spasm noticed during the entire examination process. The tone, upper limb tone was normal. In lower limb, there was increased tone. In power, the lower limb power was the flexor had 4- out of 5 and extensors 4+ out of 5 for both the hip and the knee, and the ankle, plantiflexor and dorsiflexors were both 3/5 in both the lower limbs. There was truncal weakness, and upper limbs who had normal power.
So one
Jerks
question,
Yes, sir.
Manali. If there
Yes,
is a truncal weakness,
Hmm.
if there is a truncal weakness, what does it mean? Where is the lesion likely to be? This is a very important terminology you have used. Truncal
Yes, sir.
weakness. Very good you have used it. Because everybody should see the truncal weakness is there. If you get a weakness in the trunk, where is the
Yes, sir.
likely lesion?
Sir, likely it is found in root abnormalities and in in cervical lesions.
No, truncal weakness. Sorry, asking about the truncal weakness. Trunk start from which area?
So truncal weakness is found in cervical lesion ± dorsal lesion, like dorsal column lesion, and also in like root abnormality, like typically found in Guillain-Barré syndrome.
Very good. So polyneuropathy, that means as soon as the root is coming out bilaterally and it is supplying the erector muscle, you can get the polyneuropathy. This is one. Radiculopathy also, bilateral radiculopathy, and also in that classical involvement in the cervical region. Your cervical region, if you get the problem, you can get the truncal muscle weakness. Next.
Next, sir, The jerks were exaggerated in both the lower limbs. Both the ankle and the knee jerk was exaggerated. The clonus was absent. Upper limb jerks was normal. Superficial reflexes, plantar was extensor. Abdominal reflexes were all absent. Cremasteric and anal reflex was absent, while bulbocavernous reflex was present.
Plantar was extensor bilateral. Yeah?
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Then
Then
anything else?
So coming to the sensory examination, root and fine touch, pain, temperature were all diminished up till the nipple level. There was a zone of hyperesthesia just above the nipple level. Vibration was diminished up to D2 spinous process, and joint position sense was diminished in both the lower limbs.
Why there occurs the hyperesthesia at the level of the nipple? What is the mechanism of hyperesthesia?
So irritation of the nerve root.
which nerve?
Which nerve root?
Like so basically the level at which the lesion is there, just above it there is not complete damage but partial irritation of that sensory nerves at that level.
Root entry.
Can you just explain in a better way? Orko?
Yes, sir. So actually what happens is the disposition of the fibers, if we see, the spinothalamic, as it enters into the spinal cord, it crosses up to about 2 segments after ascending for about 2 segments. Sorry, sir?
Yes, yes.
Continue.
So it is due to the irritation of the spinothalamic tract, as a result of which for those 2 segments there is a zone of hyperesthesia over there.
So if see, you are very much right, Manali. I like to explain in that way. You have taken the opinion. You have got a sensory level at the nipple. So if you got a dermatomal level, it is a T4. Okay? So this is T4. But you see, whenever there is a lesion like this at that particular level, when the spinothalamic tract is going, it is an ascending tract or a descending tract. It is an ascending tract. So it is going from below up. So once it enters the spinal cord, it does not immediately cross in the same segment. It ascends for another 1 to 2 segments up, and then it crosses. And that is the reason the sensory level is in one part, hyperesthesia or a zone of hyperesthesia is a little bit above. So that is the mechanism of action. Okay, thank you.
Sir, one thing, why is getting zone of hyperesthesia? One explanation is that irritation
of the spinothalamic tract.
Root entry actually.
Right,
Why
right.
there is a disease? Root entry zone in inflammation or irritation of the root entry. At the level of root entry, you will get the hyperesthesia, and the sensor level and the different level because of ascending level.
Right. Next.
So cranial nerves were all normal. I just elaborate on the second cranial nerve.
Okay, fine.
So
All normal, no?
Yes, sir.
If no
All
abnormality,
normal. Cranial nerve, all normal.
Yes,
all
sir.
normal, so you can go ahead.
Then you skip it. Then you go
Yes.
to the, because you have to finish up.
Okay, sir.
Cerebellum is also not.
Normal, and gait was a spastic or scissoring gait.
Manali, you mentioned gait. What are the steps in examination of the gait? What are the steps? Gait examination. It is
yes,
not
sir.
simple
Sir,
walk.
actually in gait examination, we have to see first, first the patient is sitting. We have to ask the patient to stand up. Then we ask the patient to walk. When he is walking, I have to see for arm swing, and we have to see for any tendency to fall. If the patient can do up to this, then we ask the patient to increase his speed and see if he has increased tendency to fall. We ask him to turn his head, and then we ask him to move about a chair. Then we ask him. Then we ask him
to overcome an obstacle.
Oh, overcome, yes.
Put a box.
Overcome an obstacle like a box. Then after that, we ask him to turn first 180 degree, and if he can do it, then 360 degree, Then after turning, then again we have to ask him to return, and at the last again sit. So this
Yes,
is the
yes.
complete thing.
This is the complete. Gait examination does not mean only walking, go and come back. You have to observe the hand movement, you have to observe the tendency to the fall, but there may be defect in any part, not in every part. Okay. Orko, your comment on the gait?
Gate, we have to notice a few things. She has told the method. We have to see few things while assessing the gate. First, we have to see the stance and the base of support the patient. Is it a wide based or is it a narrow base, or is it a crossed appearance of both the lower limbs? Then we have to see as the patient walks. Again, we have to see the base of support. Is it a wide based gait? Is the patient swaying towards either side? Another thing we have to see is the cadence of the footsteps. Another thing we have to see is the arm swing of the patient. Is it normal or is it swinging? Or is it swinging more than normal? Then we have to see the turning of this patient. The turning of the patient, we have to see the gait, the ability of that patient to start the gait and how he can stop the gait. So these are important findings we have to see while assessing some extrapyramidal system of the patients.
So what are the different type of gaits we observe in neurological disorder? Orko, you please explain to the students. Different
Yes.
type of abnormal gait.
What we can see in a classical, what we have seen in the cerebellar gait, what happens is patient actually the first most sign is the tandem gait. We must, while assessing minute cerebellar lesions, we examine the tandem gait of the patient. So what is the tandem gait? The patient is asked to walk on a straight line with the heels touching the toes of the other foot. In minute cerebellar lesions also, the first to go is the tandem gait. What happens next is when the patient walks, he usually cannot stand on a narrow base of support. So he uses, for his own compensation, he uses a wide based gait. And we can see that due to cerebellar lesions, that patients may sway to the side of the cerebellar lesion. Okay, so if you go for problems due to the vestibular system, the gait, we can see that the patient sways to the opposite side of the site of the lesion. Now, another thing in seeing the gait of sensory, the problem of sensory system, the posterior column or the large fiber involvement, where there is severe sensory ataxia, what we see classically is the stamping gait of the patient. As why the patient stamps? Actually, the patient has no sensory input from the peripherally placed joints. So what he does, one explanation is that he stamps to take awareness of his position of the leg through the sound it makes from the stamping. Other thing, he tries to generate sensation from the foot by hitting the ground hard. So in sensory ataxia, we may get a stamping gait. So what happens in pyramidal tract lesions? If it is a unilateral pyramidal tract lesion, what happens, what we see commonly in stroke patients in the road, the patient, one side there is involvement of the pyramidal tract as there is spasticity at that side. So what happens, the patient drags his limb towards with him. So as a block, as an end block. So this is what happens in unilateral, and what she has said already, that in bilateral pyramidal tract lesions, there is bilateral spasticity, as a result of which one leg and another leg works in a crisscross fashion, which is also called classically as the scissor-like gait. Another thing I would like to explain is while assessing the extrapyramidal system, the problem of Parkinsonism, what happens, the patient, which is called a festinating type of gait. Usually it's a short gait. Usually patients have very short steps. They have problem in gait ignition. They have problem in stopping. However, this may improve with the help of sensory cues. Now patient has difficulty, it has a very slow gait. He takes very short strides. There is a classical stoop down posture of the patient, which is totally contributing to the whole festinating type of a gait. Another type of gait which we find in frontal lesions, bilateral frontal lesions we get in multi-infarct state, we get in vascular dementia, we may get in hydrocephalus also. Also the patient has a wide based gait and takes short strides. This is a frontal type of a gait. Another type of a gait I must say is, I have already explained the extrapyramidal one, and also in peripheral neuropathy where there is foot drop. What the patient does is to clear the foot off from the ground, the patient usually takes a high stride over the ground, as a result of which this is called a high stepping gait. So these are basically the important common gait types we must keep in our mind.
Very good. Very good. And one thing you must have to add is that when the Parkinsonian patient to start with, it is usually an unilateral. And so
Yes,
the arm swing will be reduced on one side. Later
Yes.
on, when the disease is advanced, the bilateral swing of the arm is reduced. And it is a
Exactly.
forward. And by
Yes.
one thing very important, during this gait, sometimes patient can fall. In Parkinsonian patients always falls forwards. But a patient with a supranuclear palsy always falls backwards. That is also very
Backwards.
important to remember.
Yes.
Sir, another gait is waddling gait. Waddling gait
Waddling
also
gait.
get muscular. Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Muscular
that is the
And
waddling
proximal
gait is a
muscle
proximal
weakness,
muscle weakness.
may get.
Any proximal muscle weakness can give rise to waddling gait. In case of very early childhood or in case of children and infancy, you can get bilateral congenital dislocation of hip joint, waddling gait. Second
Yes.
important in Duchenne muscular dystrophy, Becker's muscular dystrophy. You can get in the rickets, you can get in the osteomalacia.
Even
And
pregnant.
commonly, normally in pregnancy, you can get
Yes.
the waddling gait. So these are the important causes of the waddling gait.
In
So
one side hemiplegia will get a circumduction. It's like the
Right.
circumduction. And
Circumduction.
cerebellar also will get a wide base gait. Manali, one thing I just want to ask you, for example, a person, for example, a cultivator or a cultivator while working in his paddy field, he's feeling that while I'm doing my work in the paddy field, there is no problem. But while walking over the divider, I'm not able to walk and I'm falling. But while working in the field, I'm moving either and thither, there is no problem. What is your diagnosis? He cannot walk over the divider.
Sir,
He is a farmer.
sir,
While working in the field, he
because
is very
like
comfortable.
while
Yes.
sir, while walking on the divider, most probably he is having to walk in a fashion similar to tandem gait, where he has to walk.
So I just want to know where is the lesion? Which structure is
So,
affected?
sir, if I go by what Dr. Orpagova Chakraborty had said, like when the lesion might be in the cerebellum, like when
Excellent.
not-
Hi, very fine.
Excellent, very right. So
Excellent.
is the particular word used is aisles. Between the two rows, when you go to the cinema hall and you want to cross the chairs, 5 or 6 chairs, in a small narrow passage, it is very difficult, like that of what he has told. So there is another term which has come in the chat box by, I think, the Professor Bhaskar Ghosh has asked. Orko, can you answer it? Normal pressure hydrocephalus, apraxia of gait. Apraxia of gait.
Yes, sir. There is also problem in the patient has difficulty in initiating the gait, and after
Very good, very good. There is also an ignition failure.
Yes,
In case of this is just like that of your frontal lobe disorder.
frontal lobe disorder.
Okay, that is
Manali,
also.
yes. Manali, you have written that cerebellum there is no abnormality. How in this paraplegic patient, how have you examined the cerebellar or the coordination in the lower limb?
Sir, basically, since the patient was having around
Can you
4 by 5 power.
wait, sir. Manali, just go back to your slides. So the power. Yes. Now you answer from here.
Sir, normally we know that if a patient is having 3 or more power, then he can walk. So in this patient, most of the powers were 3 or above, like 4 maximum. So because of that, he was able to move his legs, though they were a little bit clumsy movement, but he was being able to do it.
Your
But the
ankle power is
interpretation
around-
would not have been correct. If I interpret from that, it would not be correct in the background of paraparesis.
Yes.
Because there was
that's why
already-
if there is a motor weakness, better to avoid this coordination movement in that part, either upper limb or lower limb. If there is motor weakness, because that will definitely affect. Okay.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Okay. Manali, what about the reflex? reflex? Have you mentioned the reflex?
Yeah, she has mentioned.
Mention exaggerated. Acha, my question is, what do you mean by exaggerated reflex? What are the component
Yes,
of the
sir.
reflex? What are the component of the reflex?
So basically, exaggeration, we normally, what we notice is the velocity or the speed of the reflex. But actually, we have to, in the background of a weak muscle, then we may not be getting such a brisk velocity or speed. In that case, we have to also notice the reflexogenic area of the jerk, and also the amplitude of the jerk.
Also the latency. Latency,
Absolutely.
if there is exaggerated, because
Hmm.
depends on the muscle mass and bulk, the range of movement will change, speed and velocity. So reflexogenic area, if there is exaggerated response, even outside you touching the tendon, you can get the reflex. So reflexogenic area, your latency and your threshold. Threshold means just slight, if you just slightly you press, you get the reflex. So apart from speed and velocity or range of movement, what we commonly seen, it is the latency, it is the threshold, it is the
Will be
reflexogenic
decreased.
area.
Reflexogenic area
All
will
three
decrease.
components are very important in stamping as the exaggerated jerk. Orko, will you add
Yes, sir.
anything? Will you add
Actually,
anything?
sir, more than the movement of the joint, we see the contraction of the muscle. It
Yes.
is a much better indicator.
Yes.
So can Manali, you tell that what type of reflex is this? Knee jerk or ankle jerk? What are the monosynaptic or polysynaptic? Can you
Monosynaptic,
explain
sir.
that?
The
Monosynaptic.
deep tendon reflexes are monosynaptic. Yes, sir.
And
And
plantar?
pressure pathway.
Polysynaptic.
Yes.
Superficial reflex.
Orko, there is
Yes,
a
sir.
lot of misconception going on in eliciting the plantar response.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just for the students, what should be the correct method you just describe to the students?
Yes, sir. So actually, while eliciting the plantar response, what we should do is to carefully stimulate the S1 dermatome, because it is the main apparent of the plantar reflex. So what is being done is, before testing for a plantar, what we should do is to check for any thick sole, any callosities which may be hampering with the plantar response.
Also,
One thing more we
osteoarthritis
should,
of the great toe.
yes, sir, I am coming to it. Also, we should also see that if there is any bony condition of the great toe, which may be hampering the flexion or extension movement of the, like maybe in osteoarthritis, maybe for gout, any bony ankyloses which maybe patient may be having. In rheumatoid arthritis also deformities are there. While testing, what we should do, what should we use? Actually, what is written everywhere, actually what was classically described is to use the key of a Bentley car, they had said. What was the which is the ideal thing to, but we do not have our Bentley, so what we use is our keys, is our own keys, which should have a blunt end. Now, while testing, we should not give very much pressure, as a result of which this may be a withdrawal reflex. We should go laterally. We should go laterally through the lateral margin of the sole up to before the pad of the fifth toe, fifth small toe. If till there the flexion response is not met, what we can do is to turn medially up to before the second metatarsal, ahead of the second metatarsal. Because if we go to the first one, what may happen is eliciting a grasp reflex, which is occurring in the lower limb, as a result of which there may be false flexion of the great toe. So these are what we should keep in mind while assessing a plantar response.
Okay.
If you give
So
a
can you demonstrate it?
I have a video, I can show it.
You just, Manali, you take your screen out and Orko can demonstrate this one.
Actually, my screen sharing is disabled over here, so admin can help me enable my.
You
Kaushik,
send to Manali.
Kaushik, Kuntal, Kuntal,
Is sent to Manali or Kuntal. Or Orko, what we can do, you give
Yes,
the
sir.
video to me, I will put in the group.
Okay,
Or
sir.
now you can WhatsApp to Manali. At the end, she can show from his.
Okay, sir. I'll do that, sir. I'll put it at the. I'll send her. I'll send her the video.
Suppose in that patient foot is amputated, then how will elicit the plantar response?
Sir, what we can do is we have some plantar equivalents to check for.
What are
Like
those?
what happens in a total plantar. What is the total complete response which occurs in a plantar response? Is that there is what we do is to plantar is what we do is give a nociceptive stimulus. So what we should do is that we remove our leg from the nociceptive stimulus. So the movements which are required in removing the leg from a nociceptive stimulus, which may be the extension of the ankle of the foot at the ankle joint, there may be flexion at the knee, and there may be at the hip. There may be another thing which is the the structure called the tensor fascia lata. There may be tightening of the tensor fascia lata, as a result of which if there is much more, there is intense, there is contraction of the tensor fascia lata. There may be even abduction at the hip joint. So these should be kept in mind while assessing the plantar response. And in the case of amputation, the much more proximal responses can be seen as plantar equivalents.
A contraction of the inner hamstrings. Okay.
Finally, you
Sir,
start
I
your
have a
skin.
sir, I have a question with respect to this. Sir,
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
yes.
sir, there was one patient in our ward whose like amputation was done from knee below. So in that case, sir, how can we check
Yes,
the
you can use
plantar?
the stamp of the knee. That is all right. Just where the skin grafting has been given, you can put the keys on that area, and that will give you the tensor of the fascia lata more than the usual normal response. That is a much more sufficient. Okay, and
Yes.
you look at the hip joint.
You have to give the pressure over the stomach. That is.
Okay, sir.
So you start sharing your skin again, and finish up.
Sir, I will share.
Yes, yeah. Have you completed? Have you completed?
No, sir. A few more slides were left. Okay.
So show us those slides, then we will.
Oh, yes, sir. Sir, I already told the sensory, cranial nerve, cerebellum, and glit. And sir, among other system examination, everything was within normal limits. So I'm not elaborating.
One thing, Manali.
Yes, sir.
What
Yes,
what I observed, there is a pro forma while presenting a neurological case. First, you have
Yes,
to
sir.
tell regarding the higher function, then cranial
Yes.
nerves, then motor, then sensory, autonomic, then your peripheral nerves, skull, spine, coordination, skull, spine, cerebellar, then skull, spine, like that. You have to go in that way. You initially first told that the higher function, then skull and spine. That is not actually advisable. You have to describe the skull and spine. That is in a chronology. Because
okay, sir. Okay, sir. Now, sir, coming to the
Dr. Arko, I think any comment from Dr. Arko regarding this chronology of presentation?
No, exactly, sir. What we have told is exactly what we do.
Okay.
Okay, sir. So coming to the summary after examination, sir, it is like.
Have you seen the peripheral nerve? Examined here. Skull and spine and peripheral nerve.
Okay, sir. Sir, actually,
Your answer should be you have to see the peripheral nerves whether it is thickened or not. Okay.
And skull and spine, gibbous or not.
Spine, and cranium is important. Is there any gibbous? Is there any gibbous? You have to see.
Yes, that I have mentioned.
You have mentioned. Very good.
And signs of meningeal irritation. And signs of meningeal irritation also.
Yes, sir.
Mentioned.
Yes, sir. Sir, my slides are visible, right?
No.
They're not visible. So, 1 second.
You share your screen.
So now it's visible, so.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Coming to the summary after examination, this is a case of acute onset bilaterally symmetrical spastic kind of paraparesis with truncal involvement. Sensory involvement now we have tested of both the spinothalamic and dorsal column with sensory level up to the D4 spinal level corresponding to the vertebral level of D2 and human type of bladder. Suggestive of acute non-compressive myelopathy, most probably due to acute transverse myelitis at D4 spinal level. Now, sir, I will tell the investigations.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Sir, significant findings under investigations was in MRI dorsocervical spine with centering at the D2 vertebra showed that there was D1 to D6 longitudinally extensive hyperintensity in T2 cut. MRI brain was normal. Visually evoked potential for eye was done, which was also normal. CSF study showed mild pleocytosis, all were lymphocytes. Slightly raised protein 50 milligram per DL, sugar was normal. CSF was positive for aquaporin 4 antibody along with blood, and the paired sample was negative for oligoclonal band. ANA was negative and serology was negative. So to provisionally diagnose this patient, it is a case of acute onset non-compressive myelopathy due to longitudinally extensive transverse myelitis from D1 to D6 spinal level due to neuromyelitis optica spectrum disorder. Now, the patient, this was the case I had seen in 2019. After that, the patient was on continuous follow-up with us. Initially, he had received 3 doses of pulse methylprednisolone when he was admitted under us, but there was no significant response. Thereafter, we tried with IVIG, but there also only partial response. So from the neuromedicine department, they had given him plasmapheresis. 3 such sittings were given, and thereafter the patient is on rituximab maintenance therapy. He is receiving so for the last 6 months, like 6 monthly dose, and now he can perform normal daily activities, and his bladder bowel functions have also been restored.
What actually your diagnosis is NMO spectrum disorder because of
Yes,
what?
sir.
There is no involvement of eye. How will defend this?
Yes, sir. Sir, basically,
neuromyelitis optica. Here there is only myelitis part. There is no optica part.
Yes, sir. Sir, basically, according to the classification, if there are 4 clinical findings. If we get aquaporin 4 antibody positive, then even if only 1 clinical criteria matches, then we can stamp it as NMO. But if the aquaporin 4 antibody report is not available, or if it is negative, then we have to show that there are 2 core clinical criteria, out of which 1 should be optic neuritis or a myelitis, and along with that we have to prove it on imaging in the form of MRI finding. So in this case, since we got the antibody positive, even if we didn't get clinical or investigation proved optic nerve involvement, even with myelitis, we can stamp it as NMO.
So aquaporin 4 antibody present where? Aquaporin.
Sir, in CSF, sir, CSF and blood.
Good, very good. So you have told the correct criteria, and because there are certain minor criteria and the major criteria previously, now you have told the right thing. Then if you got the very classical aquaporin 4 positivity along with any of the classical picture of the long extensive involvement of the spinal cord, even if in absence of your eye involvement, we can stamp it. It's an NMO spectrum disorder. There is also another entity which is known as MOG antibody syndrome.
MOG antibody, yes.
Anti-MOG,
So
yes,
you have to remember that thing also. The very characteristic features of involvement of the optic nerve in multiple sclerosis, MOG and NMOSIS are different. So MOG usually is a very classically, it is the optic nerve head, which is very much involved. Anterior segment is involved.
Papillitis, yes.
Very important, anterior segment. But
Yes.
posterior involvement or the chiasmatic involvement is more common in case of your NMOSIS disorder. These two may be your bilateral. And in multiple sclerosis, it can be
It is
a sketchy,
unilateral to start with.
unilateral it is more common and it may be patchy involvement. So these are the very important things. And in the spinal cord, classical corda-equina lesions are specific for your more important for your MOG antibody, whereas dorsal and cervical region involvement is more common for your NMOSIS spectrum disorder. So you are very justified. Then even without your hiccup, your vomiting, or your involvement of the eye, the other criteria have been filled and your diagnosis is definitely correct. Now, one question has come, Orko,
Yes,
what do
sir.
you put the extrapyramidal disorder in extrapyramidal disorder in the in sequential list of neurological examination?
Sir,
I
we should do in the motor system itself. We
Yes,
can
I
yes.
think
Incoordinate-
assessment of tone, involuntary movements. We
No,
can include in the
Coordination, yes.
motor system examination.
Coordination and
right. I also agree with you.
Yes.
That as such, we do not have any extrapyramidal system examination like that, especially in the bigger stuff of neurology, don't find like that. So when you examine the tone, you can also say in the gait, and also you should mention these things as you already mentioned. I think that will suffice.
Yes.
So anything you have to add, Manali? Do you like to add anything? Okay, fine. Now, Orko, can you tell us how to find out the sensory level? She has mentioned about a sensory level of this patient at the nipple level. So there is a controversy and there is something in the mind of some of the treating physician till now, that where from we should start, whether from the normal to abnormal side or from abnormal to normal side, to find out the sensory level and how it should be tested. Can you show us or you have to describe it?
Sir, I can describe it. What is there? There is that the patients, they have usually a level, a single level. What we should do is in other examination, what we do, we test the normal first, then go for the abnormal findings. However, in the sensory level, we can do from the abnormal to the normal. Now, what we can do that if we can protocolize and if we can go for a proforma, there is a proforma where it is graded that the sensation can be graded from 0, which is there is no sense, 1 that is decreased sense, and 2 where there is complete fully sensation is there. What we should do, we should test for all the modalities. We should the prototype being fine touch for the posterior column sensations and pinprick for the pain or the spinothalamic sensation. What we should do is we have about many points starting from the toe to upwards. What we can do is score them. There are about 56 points in that proforma. If I can share my screen, I can show. Okay, I am disabled. So they score on 56 points beginning from the toe to the upper trunk, where they score 1, 0, 1 or 2. They score 0, 1 or 2 for each sensation, and they score for each half of the body. Each half of the body, one side they score the fine touch and pinprick, other side they also go for the fine touch and the pinprick. And at the point where there is maximal, there is some amount of decrease in the, that is 1 score of 1, that is the sensory level in that side. However, if we see that if we compare both the sides, the more rostral one is actually the sensory level. If there is different sensory levels on either side, what we see that more rostral one, the sensory level which is more rostral, that is actually the sensory level. We should keep the upper level of sensory loss at that point.
Good.
Yes.
So that is the message, very clear message. You should go from the abnormal to the normal side, and rostral area is to be considered as the best side.
And you have to see
And
bilaterally.
both the modalities of sensation, with the pin as well as with the cotton, you have to test. So this is very important message I want to give. Now, Professor Paul, do you
Yes,
like
yes.
to continue or we can end it today here?
Sir,
Yes,
one thing.
now, yes, Manoranjan, please.
Sir, regarding Dr. Orka, I am asking him What
Yes,
the students tell regarding the sensation, thermal sensation, cold and temperature. How do they
Sir.
examine during examination?
Manali, you
Sir, actually we
remove your
test.
screen.
Yes, sir.
Stop sharing. Okay.
The spinothalamic sensation we are testing in the sensory level by the pinprick actually. Also, we can test the temperature also. What we do is we take water in a test tube and we may heat it about at plus minus 7 degree from 37 degrees, and we can use it as a hot sensation of hot or cold. We can test.
Orko,
At bedside, what we can do is that we can use the metal edge of a hammer for cold sensation also.
Orko, my question is, if suppose pain and temperature usually go the same track.
Same.
If you examine the pain, do you think there is a necessary for examination of temperature separately?
Actually, sir, it's not necessary because pain we test bedside pain, that would suffice actually for spinothalamic sensation.
If you give more temperature, there is chance of all or injury, heat injury also.
There is chance
We
of,
cannot take
yes
it.
sir, heat injury. Yes.
But actually they do not go by the same track. There is other difference.
Yes.
In one situation I cannot remember, there is another example of dissociative anesthesia. That is the pain is lost but temperature is preserved. That I cannot remember.
Yes, sometimes in
Sir has
Hansen's also.
Sir has already
Happens.
said in the chat over here that there is, in case of leprosy, there may be
Hansen's,
dissociation.
Yes, leprosy. Yes.
Hansen's,
Now I
yes.
Sir has
remember.
already
That is another
said.
Leprosy. This
Leprosy
happens.
should be considered. This is the thing. Acha, Orko, there is a question that how we should hold the ankle during plantar elicitation or position of the lower limb.
Sir, we should hold both the malleoli.
Video would have been better. Anyway, you just tell. Can you share your screen?
Sir,
Sir, I also already make him co-host, so he can
Kutal,
share.
make him co-host.
Sir, already done, sir. I have already
Now
done.
you can
He
share the video. You have done
yes,
the
sir.
video.
Yes, sir. I can.
And now you
Sir,
share
can you see the screen, sir?
Yes,
No,
yes.
you share it now. Your screen zoom has come. Now share it. Yes. It has come. Yes, very good. Make it full screen.
Next week, I'll give a case of quadriparesis.
Good.
That is also very important from the students' examination point of view. So today is the paraparesis. Next
This is a
quadriparesis.
visual
Now
representation. Visual demonstration.
Demonstration.
So,
Yes.
Orko
Demonstrate.
start.
Sir, can you see?
Yes.
Yes, visible.
We are
Go ahead.
seeing for the bony ankylosis. Then we are seeing for any thickening or callosities. Then we go to the lateral board with the key. And what we can see, there is flexion of the great toe, along with there is flexion of all the little toes. And this is a case of a ischemic stroke, where we can see that only by giving some amount of stimulation in the lateral border, there is extensor response.
Start the video.
Sir, I have played the video already.
It is not
No,
moving.
It is not
Okay.
moving.
But being the please move this window away from the shared application. This should be moved away. You start.
I am once again, I have played the video. It is actually playing on my screen.
But it is not moving here. You make the full screen first. The file is corrupted.
Okay, sir.
You prepare
Sir,
the video again and give to me. I'll put in the video, put in the group. It will be helpful for the students. Huh?
Okay, sir.
Orko?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Tomorrow, day after tomorrow, you prepare the.
So
new
only
video.
today I can send. Man, it's prepared. It's on my computer itself.
You send to me. I'll put in the group. Okay.
So
Okay, sir.
medial malleolus, what you are telling? Medial malleolus.
So we can hold in both the malleoli, the medial and the lateral malleoli, make it in a straight position so the toes face towards the ceiling. Then we can go further. That's the position.
Okay.
Other way also you can do, you can have a just mild flexion at the level of knee, and you can turn over that side and you can give a
Yes.
Lastly, there are many senior professors attached today. Anybody want to comment? Please raise hand. And Kuntal will unmute. Dr. Parvati Nandi, I can see. He is the professor and head of Sikkim Monikal Medical Institute of Medical Science, Gangtok. Madam Kuntal, দেখো পার্বতী নন্দী ম্যাডামকে একটু আনমিউট
স্যার,
করো।
সবগুলো তো আমি দেখতে পাচ্ছি না, আমি চেষ্টা করছি বাকিদের।
পার্বতী PARVATI পার্বতী। আচ্ছা দেখো আমি তো পারবো, আমি তো কোহোস্ট আছি। এক মিনিট
হ্যাঁ তুই করে দে না।
হ্যাঁ আমি করতে পারবো, আমি তো করতে পারবো। এই তো করে দিয়েছি। ম্যাডাম, your comment, your suggestion for further.
Unmute, madam.
Yes, madam, unmute.
আনমিউট করো ম্যাডাম, প্লিজ আনমিউট।
আমি করে দিয়েছি প্যানেলিস্ট, আমি আনমিউট করে দিচ্ছি। ask to unmute. Okay, ask to unmute. হ্যাঁ ম্যাডাম, your comment and your further suggestion to improve this forum.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
very
yes,
nice,
yes.
audible.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. It is very beneficial for us, especially because we are in a peripheral sector. We don't get to see, our PGs don't get to see such good cases. So this is a very good initiative and our PGs are benefiting. I would like to thank you, sir, because we do get paraparesis, quadriparesis very rarely over here because
Acha,
Gangtok
acha.
is a small place and ours is a paid hospital. We don't get the government set up cases. So this exposure is very good for our PGs. That only I would like to tell, and we would like to continue to participate. I would like our PGs also to participate so that we can learn in the process.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank you.
Bhaskar Ghosh is here. Can you like to make one or two comment, Bhaskar? প্যানেলিস্ট করে দে জ্যোতির্ময়।
করে দিচ্ছি পার্থ রায়কে করে দিলাম।
আর দ্বিজেন দাস অনেক কোয়েশ্চেন করেছে, দ্বিজেনকে করে দে।
ভাস্কর ঘোষ নেই।
তাহলে দ্বিজেনকে কর।
দ্বিজেনও নেই দেখছি,
কোয়েশ্চেন করে চলে গেছে।
হ্যাঁ আচ্ছা, ডক্টর পার্থ রায়।
Short comment, Partho, very short comment. Time is already 10.
Thank you. What I would like to suggest is that, is there a possibility of bringing in patients to make it more interactive
No.
and like a grand round like we have in here? Well, I'm calling in from Liverpool for those who do not know me.
No.
Is it possible to have a patient demonstration of clinical signs?
Not possible because now
At
for
this
the
juncture, it
COVID,
is not possible, Partho. When you will come to India, I have already talked with you that we will have something in our mind. So when
Okay.
you come to India, after
All
the
are COVID
COVID
patient,
scenario
all are
comes
COVID.
back, everything normal, then we will definitely take up your question. I mean, take a proposal. So at this juncture, I don't think it will be very much feasible. Thank you for participating. Dijan has joined. Dijan has joined.
Join.
Yes, he has raised his hand. You
Koi-
make him
koi-
co-host. Dijan?
না দিজেনকে দেখতে পাচ্ছি না।
Yes, he is raising his hand.
Dr.
দিজেন
Ghosh
দা
also
দিয়েছে।
joined.
ওকে
You just make him co-host.
Dr. Ghosh also joined.
করে দিয়েছি।
Sir, Dr. Ghosh also joined. He has asked many questions.
ডক্টর শিবেন্দু ঘোষ।
Yes.
No. This is Bhaskar.
Bhaskar Ghosh.
Acha, Dijan.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Dijan, bolo.
Sir, good evening. At the very
Yes.
outset, very much congratulations to the organizer and to Dr. Manali. She has presented the case very beautifully. I have raised some question in the chat box because I was also a little bit confused in certain situation. As M.K. Roy sir has described, that lateral spinothalamic tract involvement is the reason of hypersensitivity above the segment. I am little doubt because if there is bilateral, if total cord section, then if the fibers are entering, where will the matter? Because when it remains in the same side or it crosses in the opposite side, it will remain in the same side. So will it be the responsible factor to cause hyperesthesia above the band? I've got little doubt in that. It is okay in case of hemisection of the cord.
Sir, that's why there will be a zone of hyperesthesia. You will get a
Sure.
band of hyperesthesia, not a single line. You will get a
That
broad
is a
band.
zone.
It's broadband area. That's why.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, sir. And another question I also raised that during the presentation, Manali described after the higher function examination for the meningeal sign. So in this case, it's okay. But in case of quadriplegia, sometimes there may be a cervical cord.
No, you should not go for the meningeal signs beginning. At the
Yes.
what you have to see, you have to exclude any injury in the cervical region.
Yes, sir,
Because the
yes.
history is very important in point. Obviously, any straight road traffic accident or in a straight street corner accident, never touch the neck. Just keep it in a fix so that we do not cause any harm to the patient.
Yes,
So
sir,
that
yes,
is
sir.
very important. Meningeal signs, because you should be confirmed that there is no quadriparesis. Both the upper limbs are normal. There is
Yes,
nothing.
sir.
Then you will
Yes.
see the meningeal sign.
Yes, sir.
So
Thank
Bhaskar Ghosh is here. Bhaskar Ghosh, let us be quick.
ভাস্কর বলছে
Professor
দেখতে
Ghosh.
পাচ্ছি না
তো একটু আগে হাত দেখালো আবার বেরিয়ে গেল
কোথায় দেখছি না তো
তাহলে ছেড়ে দাও
Manali, you have done a very beautiful job. And Manali,
Thank you,
during his undergraduate period, he was my student, and she used to write history so nice. I that time I told for even the postgraduate student cannot write history at that time so nicely. Thank you,
Manali,
Manali.
thank you. Manali, thank you very much because
Thank
you have done a very marvelous job and you keep it up and percolate the message to your friends so that more